recording. Hello, welcome. My name is Bryce Tubbs. Today I am joined by Nancy Giacalone. She is the owner of Olympic Crest Insurance Incorporated. She helps employers achieve their business goals through the use of both insurance and non-insurance solutions. Is there anything else you'd like me to add to that?
I would like to give you a gold star for being able to pronounce my last name correctly. It's a huge accomplishment. So awesome. Kudos on that. And I think you covered it.
I have that weird ability to where I can kind of double track in my mind when I'm saying something versus think at the same time. So I almost messed it up a couple times during that. But I'm very, very excited to have Nancy here in front of us because she's been in business for a long time. And, you know, I don't know if most people understand this, but if you've been in business for over 10 years, it takes a tremendous amount of respect. And it's crazy because you've been through a couple of recessions then, right?
I have. So in April, I'll have been in business for 25 years and started as a one-person shop in a tiny little office. And I have been through the ups and downs with the economy and challenges in the healthcare industry. So it takes a lot of tenacity to last. Most small businesses fail in the first year.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. So what was life like before you got into insurance?
Well, let me see if I can remember back that far. No, I was a sales rep for an automotive company, and I loved what I did, but I ended up moving because I got married, moved up to this area, and needed to look for a new job, and took a job in a insurance agency as essentially an admin assistant. And very shortly afterwards, I discovered that I liked what I was doing, and I asked for the opportunity to go out into sales. And again, think back to the mid 80s, and they said, no, you wouldn't be a very good fit for that. I said, you know what, I'd really like to try it anyway. So I ended up taking a cut in pay and spending half the day working my admin job while I started to develop a sales book of business. And then fast forward about a year from that is when one of the owners actually gave me the opportunity to buy his stock in the agency.
Oh. And that's kind of how you transitioned into owning your own was when you, okay, wow.
So I was there for 10 years as a partner in an agency.
Okay. Wow. So can you tell us about building up your book of sales? I'm sure a lot of my viewers would love to hear how, you know, the old school method and how it's combining with the new school method.
Sure. So about, I was at that agency for about 10 years, and then they were going to sell to a larger agency, and it wasn't something I was interested in doing. So at that point in time, I went out on my own. And I had a very tiny book of business. And of course, I couldn't contact any of my former clients. Yeah. And I had to start over again and really did it, you know, the old fashioned way, asking for referrals, making phone calls, putting myself out in the community. And it is a lot different than it is today because we have this opportunity through social media to reach people, for people to see us and to hear our message and to find that's the person that I want to work with. I mean, I think even 2 or 3 years ago, it's different than it is today. I've seen it evolve so quickly over the last couple of years.
In what way? How is it different than how maybe it might have been 2 or 3 years ago?
Well, you know, I had a business development person working for me a few years ago, and he was fabulous. And he was calling to make appointments and to schedule appointments for me. Yeah. And that was great. But, you know, honestly, that you cannot get the same reception you did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
People are now saying, no, I don't want to talk to somebody on the phone, you know, just to find out if I want to talk to somebody else. You have to find a different way to reach them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that might circle back around at some point, but right now it's kind of interesting.
It's because there's been such a flood of people doing that. So it was like, I completely understand what you're talking about. Exactly. Oh my gosh, that's very.
I have people tell me they don't even listen to their voicemails.
Well, yeah. It's almost like you have to develop an audience first.
Yes.
And then have them message you.
Yep.
And which you know is always the best business model when they come to you, but.
Be the magnet rather than the megaphone, right?
Which is weird because like that's always ideal in business, but it's almost like you have to do that in order to survive on social now. So
You do.
it's so let me ask you this about when you're building your book of business, were you joining networking groups? Were you just going around town? Were you in coffee shops?
So, because I was focused on businesses, I was focused on employers. I did a lot of trying to define what type of businesses I was most interested in. And then I mean, even back then, I had somebody making calls for me. I would develop a prospect list, and that person would make calls and try to schedule appointments for me. I'd go out and see them. If I was successful within a niche, I would ask for referrals. And then also some in networking groups, but the networking groups tended to be more successful for people that were, a C2C sales rather than a B2B sale.
Yeah,
So that was always a little bit challenging.
yeah. I remember that when we were doing an accounting firm for a family member was in person. I like in person, but it's
Yeah.
just if you're working with businesses, networking is like
Yeah.
Okay, so cool. So, can you tell us about how the structure of your business has changed over time?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, I started off, it was just me,
Uh-huh.
and I did that for a while. And then finally I had a half an employee. And then I, continued to work up. And I'm actually moving next month to a different office, but been in 5 different locations now over the course of time because I've had to move to places to accommodate our staff. Interesting, just like we're talking about how marketing's changing, the way agencies or businesses run is also changing. And rather than my next hire probably won't be a live person sitting in an office next to me, I'll probably hire a virtual assistant to
Uh-huh.
take care of some of those tasks. So while we need a core of people to do the day-to-day hand-holding stuff, it's a lot more efficient actually to work with off-site people for certain tasks.
Now, when you're thinking of virtual assistants, are you thinking only in terms of US virtual assistants or different
No,
countries?
I would be open but honestly, sometimes especially in what we're doing, there can be a language barrier.
Yeah.
And so if it's just a purely transactional assistant process, that I have no issues taking it offshore, but probably I would have one that would be US based.
Yeah, that's like if it's stuff that's non-customer facing, I've always found it's easier to get those ones, but then you have to deal
Yeah,
with like the time change
yeah,
difference too. So that's pretty cool that wow. Well, so can I ask you this?
yeah.
So if you have the ability to hire people in person, why would you want to hire a US person virtually?
Because the quality people aren't always in my backyard. I live in a I live in a pretty rural area, and
Okay.
to get the quality of person that I want, they may not be here. They may not want to work full time. So maybe I hire a couple of people that are remote located and, do that work with them on a project basis, or maybe they work part time or a couple days a week.
Interesting. Okay. That that's interesting because generally I've always whenever like a smaller business does it's because they can't afford. But oh, that's interesting. Wow.
No, I would pay more, honestly, for a quality person that wasn't here than rather pay less for somebody to, be sitting in a seat in my office and not as effective.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually very so. So who do you work with? So you were saying before it was B2B, but do you also work with individuals?
We do. So the bulk of our business, we work with employers to put together employee benefit programs for their employees. Um, but we also work with individuals for medical, dental, life, and then those transitioning into Medicare. And it's kind of interesting when I first was starting my business and trying to develop a presence in my community, again, rewind back when newspapers were popular and yellow pages, the only way I could find to advertise was to advertise to an individual. So I started advertising that we could help them with individual medical, even though that wasn't my focus. It
Uh,
was a way to develop a presence in the community, and that just blew up, and it's a pretty significant revenue stream for us now.
mhm. What are you guys using to advertise that way now? Since
We don't do
newspaper.
anything now.
Oh,
We don't do any advertising for it. It's all word of mouth, and it's crazy how much we get.
so that aspect of your business does get easier over time. Before,
That aspect is, yes.
okay, before the interview, we were talking about how business can get easier in certain areas, but it doesn't get easier in others. Can you tell us some areas that it did get easier over time, and then we can go where it didn't get easier?
Well, I think it does get easier as far as you start to learn the processes you need to have in place and how to build an infrastructure. So that definitely helps. But you know what doesn't get easier is employees, because there's always
Yeah.
going to be challenges and changes, and the economy doesn't get easier. There's years when it's easier, and there's years when it's horrible. And you always have to keep in mind that when you have a business and you have employees, that they come first. You have to take care of them first. You have to take care of your clients first, and you're low man on the totem pole for all intents and purposes.
Hmm. Interesting. So I know this will probably be an obvious question. I'm going to ask it differently. So, what is your advice to survive a recession with, without really losing your shirt?
Well, I think first of all, you always need to be, watching your income versus debt ratio and make sure that you're not overextended at any time. So that's one thing that I did right from the very beginning is I did not start my business with debt. I started it with what I could afford, and I every step along the way was carefully considered. Can I afford to make this move? Where am I going to be? What happens if I lose a big account? Because for me, the impact of losing accounts is similar to going into a recession.
Uh,
So that's my revenue. So I always have to be looking at that and making that decision so that if I do lose that big account, I don't have to call, Mary into my office and say, sorry, Mary, it was nice having you work here, but I can no longer afford you.
yeah.
So, really you need to pay attention to that. You need to plan. You also need to be looking at your sales pipeline and what you're looking to add for business, and are you staffed appropriately for that as well, because you can get into just as much trouble being understaffed as overstaffed. And then the other thing about a recession is knowing that it's going to end.
Yeah.
you know you have to know that everything is cyclical, just like the good times, they're going to end, and so you need to be preparing for both at all times.
Can I ask you this question? So going into 2008, 2009, when was the point that you started, did you ever start noticing a hit in your income, or how did you know that we were in the recession without the news telling you?
Because my clients started laying off employees, which impacted the amount of revenue we were being paid.
Mm, okay. That's, yeah.
Or going out of business.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I shouldn't be laughing, but yeah.
Yeah.
So can I ask you, what is your vision for your business now?
So my vision for my business is I recently became accredited a Health Rosetta advisor. And what that means is that we're really looking to try to transform healthcare, the way that businesses and individuals purchase healthcare, the way that hospitals bill for it, et cetera. And the goal being that we would all have access to better quality healthcare at more affordable prices. And so there's a lot of transparency, there's a lot of education that goes into that. And that really excites me because one of the reasons I like doing what I do is because I know I make a difference. And this next step, I feel that it will really, I hope that will be my legacy in this business.
Okay. So now I don't know if you consider business and life the same since they can be intertwined. What is your vision for your life?
Well, they are very intertwined for me, but I anticipate being in this business for another 7 to 10 years. I anticipate trying to phase out of it in a responsible way that provides succession for my business. And then from a life standpoint, I want to do a lot more traveling. I want to do a lot more. I love to cook. I like photography. I like to run. I'm a very active person. So I have lots of irons in the fire at all times.
Wow. Can I ask you this question? I know we were talking about the future. Can we take a step back? So oftentimes when things that are very popular to hear on social media, like Gary Vee and Grant Cardone and stuff, they're saying they're working 60 to 80 hours. But when you're first starting your business, what was your workload like? What were you spending those hours on? And then how did that change to now?
So that's such a good question. I have a different perspective on that, and yes, I hear all of it. I see all of it. I think it's a choice. I think it's a choice that everybody makes, and I've always believed in. I'm not going to call it work-life balance because I don't really think that there's ever going to be a true balance, but I do believe in work-life integration.
Mm.
And for me, money is not the be all end all in being a happy, successful person. So, and at the time I started my business, I had a young child as well. So I did work a lot of hours, but in the very beginning, I was working from home. So it made it a little bit easier. And I spent my time on learning. I spent my time on technology, trying to put good systems in place so that I could be as efficient as I possibly could as a small business. And I spent my time in sales development, trying to find prospects and opportunities and make sales. There was no social media when I started.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So how has that changed over time? So maybe 10 years in, what was the difference in how you're spending your time then?
Well, when 10 years in, I was spending a lot more time servicing clients, taking care of clients, renewing them, um, than I was focused purely on new business
Mm,
because my book had grown.
yeah. When was that shift between, since your book had grown or was growing, to when you started focusing more on servicing the clients?
Well, I mean, you can't stay focused solely on focusing on your servicing your clients, but as your book grows incrementally, so your shift is incremental as well. So you always have to reserve a certain amount of time for new business development and sales development. But there gets to be a point where when you're in the beginning, you can spend almost all of your time doing it,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
eventually it's just kind of a nice little gradual curve where your current book starts to take up this time and your prospecting and new business takes up a proportionately less period of time.
Mm. And after you start servicing clients, then when does it shift towards you're managing more employees? How do you split that up? Do you have managers over a certain field? Do you?
My business is small enough. I manage all the employees. So there's, I have a lot of responsibilities as a small business owner. I am responsible for new business sales. I do have another salesperson here at the office, but primarily the bulk of that comes from me. I manage the employees. I oversee the employees' servicing of all of our current clients. I spend a lot of time on operations, on vision forecasting, and then also developing a presence on social media.
Okay. And then how do you ever worry about energy? Like, what do you do to keep your energy high when it's a long game? So how do you?
I eat very well.
Uh,
I run and I stay healthy and active. And I think that's the biggest thing. And I have a great attitude. I mean, I might have a day or two or a 15-minute period where I'm frustrated or angry or whatever, but I don't let that stick with me. Yeah, I'm blessed to be able to do what I do. I am blessed to work with my clients and my employees, and I like it. So that keeps
yeah.
me energized.
What do you live in, a warm climate, or is it like I live in Michigan? Is it like seasonal, or what kind of climate do you live in?
So I live near Seattle. So if you've ever been to the West Coast, it's average.
Okay.
Everybody thinks it rains here all the time. It doesn't rain here all the time. It's probably nicer than most places on the East Coast.
Yeah. So let's take a step back, way back towards the beginning to when you were building up your books. I'm sure that's where a lot of people who are on social media are at. Can you tell us about, struggles with building that book up? Talk about some successes, talk about some times when clients didn't sign up with you. How are you responding to wins? How are you responding to losses when you're first starting?
Well, I think you have to be gracious at all times. I think that's really huge.
Oh,
And if you don't get an account, you can't take it as a personal affront. They made a decision based on something you may or may not have done. And I think one of the best things that you can always do if you do not win an account or an opportunity is to politely ask them why, and then to thank them and let them know that if they need your assistance at any time during the year, you'd love to be able to help them out in any way. And can you talk to them again next year? Or whatever the buying cycle is in any particular industry. But I think being gracious is one of the biggest things you can do. That same thing goes for when you lose a current client. When they leave, you thank them for being a client. You let them know, is there anything I can do to help you transition to your new vendor? And I'd love the opportunity to do business with you again in the future.
Okay.
And I really think that attitude of gratitude, for lack of, corny little term, but I think it goes a long ways. I think people appreciate it. What I did in the beginning to win opportunities was I would always learn as much as I could about the prospect, about the client, so that I knew as much as I could going in what their pain points might be, what their business model was, and could ask really good in-depth questions and really make it be about them. The more they talk during that type of a process, the more successful you're going to be.
Okay. That's interesting. So let me ask you this. So then when you were first starting to hire either your first employee or second employee, you said you did it pretty early on. Why did you choose for it to be a salesperson or?
Oh, my first employee was not a salesperson. It was an admin person.
Okay. So you basically replaced your admins. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was because you were already doing the bulk of the sales, so you just needed someone to support you?
Correct.
Okay. How did you know when the right time was to do that?
When I couldn't manage it on my own anymore.
Okay. I was asking because I didn't know if some people like to plan before they hit that spot, but I don't know.
I do that now, but I didn't then. In the
Okay.
beginning, I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. So it kind of got to the point where I was like, oh my goodness, I can't, it's just too much for me to handle anymore. But now I forecast what's coming, what the next year looks like, and forecast in when a good opportunity or when a good time would be to add an additional staff member.
Can I ask you, okay, follow-up question that. So when in the time that it took you to realize that you were in over your head and you were searching for that next replacement, did you have to take a step back or were you able to find that admin pretty quickly?
I found an admin pretty quickly, but then I had to train that person. So I wouldn't say that I took a step back, to use your, Gary Vee. I just stepped up and did what had to be done. I worked as many hours as it took to get everything done. But then worked quickly toward relieving some of that pressure on myself.
Okay. So let me ask you, so in your business, do you like momentum? Do you not care about momentum?
I love momentum.
So what for you grows your momentum, or what if you like had a big stop in production, how would you restart the momentum again?
I'm a big scheduler. I'm a big commitment person. So if I need to get something going, the first thing I do is not only do I put it on my Outlook calendar, but I do keep a notebook right next to my desk, and I write down every single morning the top 5 things I want to get done that day. And so if it's making outreach calls, asking for referrals, that's going to be on my list every single day until I can get that momentum going again. So really, I make those commitments to myself.
Okay. Interesting. And then do you just do as many outreach calls or ask for as many referrals, or is it like a set time a day, like I do 2 hours devoted to outreach calls, 1 hour for referrals?
No, I would generally block that time, and I would just say I'm going to make 5 calls, or I'm going to do this. So it's always very focused.
Okay, cool. So how can people learn more about you?
I would say the best way that people can learn more about me would be to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. I post a 2-minute Tuesday video every week that's on a lot of fun different topics. We also have a website, olympiccrest.com. And Facebook. I mean, we're across all the social media channels, but to really learn about me, I think the best way is to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay. How do they spell your name?
GIACOLONE.
Okay, excellent. And if you guys need a reference, underneath her picture is her name spelled out, so you guys can go look her up on LinkedIn. Thanks so much for doing this interview. I know it was a little bit short, but I'm pretty sure the viewers should have got a lot out of this. I know I did, because I'm always interested in like growing businesses faster. And I really do like these traditional type of businesses, insurance, accounting, investment firms. Those are really cool. So thank you so much for doing this interview. Can I ask you this? So,
Yes.
so if you guys, since you guys are able to build your community in the real world, why are you making the push or to grow social media?
Um, well, for one thing, I like it. I'm always been kind of a technology geek. If something's new, I'm interested in expanding. But I feel honestly that my network and my world has expanded dramatically through my social media efforts. I've connected with people across the country that have helped me both with my knowledge level, connected me to different people and different opportunities that I would have never had otherwise. And so I feel that it makes me better and it makes my business better.
Okay. Do you have a LinkedIn Premium or?
I have a Sales Navigator.
Okay, I was about to say, yeah, it's super helpful.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Excellent. So thanks so much for doing this interview. I really appreciate you. So to the audience, if you would like more content like this, I recommend you go join my group called Uncapped Growth Strategies. As the name suggests, we give you everything that you need to start moving towards your goals in the business that I believe that you deserve. So if it interests you, there's going to be a link in the description below. Feel free to check that out. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed creating it. Feel free to hit that share button so other people can benefit as well. Have a great day, guys. See you later, and we're done recording in 3, 2, and 1.